Hey, everybody, and welcome to the December Book of the Month Club discussion. Susan and I are going to talk a little bit about the book of this month, The Christmas Spirit by Debbie Macomber, which we both enjoyed. And I know many of you did as well. There's not really a whole lot that we can say about this book, to be honest. It was a light Christmas read, which is what I think a lot of people want this time of year. It sets us in the mood for the holiday, and I mean, it was a fun story. I enjoy it. Susan, what did you think?
I agree. We were talking about this earlier. I think of it as sort of a happy holiday greeting card.
Right.
We don't expect to have depth and great meaning or whatever in a holiday greeting card. We expect to have a happy moment, and I think that's exactly what this book is meant to be, and that is what it delivers. And
right. I think it's what the reader expects and what the reader wants this time of year. I think a lot of people want lighthearted, happy Christmas stories, and while there were some things that happened that were, I guess, not expected or whatever, I think we pretty much knew what was going to happen from the beginning.
right.
But I really do enjoy spending time inside these sort of Hallmark Christmas movie books. It's just a pleasant place
Right.
to spend time this time of year. And I think most people don't want something really heavy this time of year. But
Right.
I will say I particularly enjoyed the premise. The bartender and the minister who both seemed to think they had, the other had really easy jobs, and they, switching places and then, seeing how that works out. I enjoyed the premise quite a lot. I almost wanted her to write that story at a different time of year and maybe
Yes, and have it, make it more complex, and for us to really get into the nuances, because there actually are, sort of ironically, some commonalities between the jobs of a bartender and a minister. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is they're both counselors, right? They're both going to give people advice about living their lives, and maybe even talk about their love loss or their love gains or what have you. So that's something that they have in common. And I was trying to brainstorm a little bit, what other things would bartenders and ministers have in common? And I think one would be sometimes controlling chaos. Because you think about it in a bar, but ministers often behind the scenes have to control a lot of chaos too.
Right. I know that's true. And I think both have, I mean, they listen a lot. Bartenders listen to their customers. They don't necessarily provide spiritual counseling, but I think ministers do a lot of the same thing. They listen a lot, sometimes just listening to people.
Yeah. And I said giving advice, but the listening is even more important.
I think it is. So I really enjoyed the premise. And if anything, I enjoyed the premise so much, I just wanted to spend longer in that story.
Yeah.
So I wanted it to be, I guess, a longer story. But that's a compliment, I guess, to the author that I enjoyed it so much. I wanted it to just keep going on.
Right. You could, with another purpose in mind, you could develop quite a novel. But as it's written, how many times have we read, seen, or performed the story of Cinderella? We know exactly what's going to happen. We know how it's going to happen, and we know it's going to be happy at the end. And yet we still read it, and we know it. And so there is something in, human nature that's okay with us if we know what it's going to be and we want it to end happily, and it does.
Well, and two, in essence, I mean, we have two rom-com stories almost, it's a double header rom-com. And I mean, you always know how a rom-com is going to end. You always know, anytime you pick up a romance, that there's going to be a happily ever after. It's part of the rules, if there's no happily ever after, as Catherine Center says, someone isn't doing their job, So,
not if you're writing a rom-com, not if you're writing a romance.
Right. And I think that's what this was intended to be. And so, every time we read that type of book, we know what we're going to get, and we sign up for that eagerly. We want that. And I think that provides some sort of comfort, reading that, knowing that you're going to get that. satisfactory ending or whatever. So I really enjoyed it, and it was the perfect book for the holidays.
Wow.
So, okay, let's see. I think you probably have some experience with people thinking that your job is easier than it actually is.
Oh, absolutely. Back when I was teaching English, some of my best friends who didn't work outside the home, and Lord knows I know working inside the home and having children is a monumental challenge.
Right.
But, I remember a friend saying to me one time, well, if you have to have a job like yours where you get off work at, 3:30 in the afternoon and you don't have to work in the summer, but you've just sort of got it made. And I thought, and I wanted to say, but I didn't, because she was my friend. Take my job for a week and see what you think.
Yeah.
See what you think about teaching bell to bell to bell to this class of teenagers and this class of teenagers and this class of teenagers, and see if you can breathe at the end of the day. Not to mention, when you teach English, you take essays home to grade, and you don't get paid a dime for that.
Right.
So we don't know whether it is in work or in some facet of life. We do not know what it is until we walk in another person's shoes.
That's very true. That's very true. So, okay, we talked about. I'm looking at my notes now. The novel is, you, I think, mentioned there's a certain type of term for the structure of this novel, and you can talk about that for a minute.
Yes, I mean, it's called a frame story, which means there is a story within a story, and usually, like literally like a picture frame, it's the inner story that has the guiding purpose, but there's something in the outer frame that helps to build tension or suspense or mystery that makes us more interested in the inner story. I mean, Chekhov, I guess, was the master of the frame story, but even people, early American writers like Washington Irving, you use the frame story with a story like Rip Van Winkle. So it's not an uncommon structure. And we were talking about, some frame stories that we sort of know about before we got on the air, so to speak.
One that came to mind for me was The Princess Bride, because in that movie, there's Peter Falk, the actor, playing a grandfather, reading the book to his grandson. And the grandson keeps saying something about he doesn't want there to be any kissing, or doesn't want that, so it reminded me of that because of that. And of course, it's very different in a lot of ways, but it reminded me.
Yeah.
Of that.
Yeah. And I'm not familiar with The Princess Bride, but certainly, I mean, that to me really is the only real tension in the outer frame, is the grandson not wanting to know about the lovey-dovey, parts of the novel. But I said that, and then on reflection, I think, at least in my mind, I didn't know in the beginning who the grandmother was. Was it Millie? Or was it Grace? Because you knew it was going to be one of those two women, or maybe I missed it. But I sort of, that kept me in a little bit of suspense. Okay. And then of course we find out in the end, it's Grace who married Hank. And these are her grandchildren. So that gave it a little bit of tension, even though, to be honest, I did find the outer frame at times somewhat interruptive, because there wasn't enough to sort of connect it. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying.
I think I picked up early on because one of the kids said something about Grandpa Hank.
I missed that.
Okay, this must be, somehow I picked that
All
up.
right, I missed that. Well, okay, I figured it out eventually.
but I kind of enjoyed that because we got to see, this truly was a happily ever after, or at least, up until that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it lets us know that it has spanned the generations.
Right,
it didn't just stop that Christmas Eve with the party at the end of the novel, that it truly became a match made in heaven, so to speak. No pun intended.
I really enjoyed the scenes with with the ladies from the club. It reminded me a little bit of one of my Liz Talbot books. I have ladies from not a strip club, but from a bordello in Lowcountry bordello. And so it's, and in that book, there's a scene at Christmas where they're sort of welcomed into the fold or whatever, into the family Christmas. And I really enjoyed that because it's such a, I don't know. It's just such a different thing from anybody's experience, I guess. But it's something at the holidays, I guess, to sort of reflect on,
all God's children.
All God's children, welcoming all God's children at Christmas. And so I enjoyed that because, it just makes you stop and think, okay, not everybody has the same path in life, and people make decisions, based on their circumstances. And, we're supposed to love one another and
be inclusive. That's right. And yeah, what happens to people, it all depends on who they are, where they are, when they are, how they are. And,
right. So I thought that was a really appropriate thing to talk about at Christmas.
Yeah.
That was a good message to have.
Yes. And there seemed to be a non-judgmental tone overall. I mean, if anything, the biker gang and the strip club gals were almost, if there was any sort of tone that came out, it was almost a little bit comic,
right.
And not in a condescending kind of way, but in a lighthearted sort of way.
Right. And I enjoyed that. And I think at Christmas, you want things that are lighthearted, but that gave it, I don't know, that gave it some energy, I guess, or some comic relief. It was especially the scene where the animals were coming into the church during the Christmas play and all that. I mean, that was, and then you had the all of those groups there, and so it was like just I don't know, yes, and it felt just like, I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I could see it unfolding, and I found it funny, and just the different things. I mean, that must have been the most different service they'd ever had, or they never had one. And I think they said they'd never had a Christmas service quite like that before or since. And I imagine that's true. But I don't know. I thought it was a fun.
Yeah. I don't think and perhaps again that tone, with all the chaos happening. But I don't think it's just not a book that's meant to be taken in an overly serious way, but just to believe God's is in his heaven and all's right with the world. And gosh, Christmas can be one of the saddest, most difficult times of the year for many of us, especially if once we get a few years on us, because we look back, we can't help it. We look back to these idyllic Christmases when we were children and everything was done for us. And once you get older, that simply isn't true. But the story, it's nice to have a reminder, to sort of boost us.
Right.
I think.
Okay. Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think there's a lot more we can say about it. I think everybody who commented said they enjoyed it. I think most people enjoy reading a book with a Christmas theme or a Christmas setting at the end of the year. And I think I'd like to keep doing that, because I think most people.
I have a shelf. Of course, a lot of them are children's books, but literally, I mean, I've got at least a 4-foot wide shelf with nothing but Christmas books. Right. And I can't even say I've read all of them, but I just love to look at them and think they're there and remind me of the season and its magic and its mystery, and think about the good things.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that's all I have to say. Do you have anything else to add?
I don't think so. We are looking forward to a new year, starting in January, a lineup. I know Susan has published the list that we're going to be discussing in 2025. How can it be 2025? But we're looking forward to a wonderful year of Two Southern Susans.
I can't wait, and I am excited about our list. We've got a lot of good books on it, and I guess we will next be together at the end of January or towards the end of January to discuss Haunted Ever After by Jen DeLuca, which I'm excited about because this one was one of the books nominated for the Southern Book Prize, which, that's why it caught my attention, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Matter of fact, I just got my copy and I haven't had a chance.
I haven't started yet, but I've got mine also. So looking forward to it.
Okay. All right. Well, you have a good evening and I will talk to you soon.
Same to you, Susan. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.